2:18 a.m., the Sea of Japan, 211 miles west of the Japanese coast of Shiman Prefecture, 208 miles east of the North Korean port of Wonsan. The sea is black and running a long swell from the northwest. 3-meter waves with a 15-second period. The kind of sea that makes a destroyer's deck a working environment and a carrier's flight deck a controlled challenge. The sky is overcast at 6,000 feet. No stars, no moon, the horizon invisible. In this particular darkness and these particular waters, USS Abraham Lincoln was conducting nighttime flight operations. She had been in the Sea of Japan for 14 days. 14 days of flight operations supporting the U.S. South Korea exercise Freedom Shield. 14 days of coordinated presence with the Japan Maritime Self-Defense Force. 14 days during which the U.S. 7th Fleet had maintained a continuous carrier presence in waters that both Pyongyang and Beijing had publicly demanded the United States vacate. 14 days during which intelligence analysts at Pacific Fleet and at the Defense Intelligence Agency had been watching two separate but increasingly correlated sets of indicators build towards something that had no precedent in the post-Cold War era. A joint operation, China and North Korea, the Sea of Japan, USS Abraham Lincoln. The concept had been first assessed as theoretically possible 8 months earlier, when signals intelligence collection against both PLA Navy communications and Korean People's Army Strategic Force communications had identified a pattern of encrypted message traffic flowing on a frequency pairing that neither service used for routine coordination, a channel reserved in the NSA's traffic analysis for operational coordination between services that did not routinely coordinate. The assessment had been cautious at first. China and North Korea did not conduct joint military operations. They had not conducted joint military operations in any form since the Korean War. The diplomatic relationship between Beijing and Pyongyang was functional, but not warm. The idea of a coordinated PLA Navy and KPA military strike against a U.S. carrier group in the Sea of Japan was, in the assessment of most analysts, politically improbable. It was happening anyway. The joint operation had a name that neither government had shared with the other until 4 months into the planning process. Operation Iron Convergence. Its strategic logic was elegant in its shared simplicity. China's objective: establish a precedent that U.S. carrier operations in the Sea of Japan, waters that Beijing characterized as China's strategic periphery, carried an unacceptable operational risk. North Korea's objective: demonstrate that the KPA's conventional strike capability, combined with Chinese naval support, could generate a threat to American carriers that no amount of U.S. ballistic missile defense investment could neutralize. The shared objective: USS Abraham Lincoln, neutralized in the Sea of Japan in a single night's operation. The attack package reflected 14 months of joint planning. From North Korea, 31 KN-23 short-range ballistic missiles, a system that used a low-depressed trajectory and a terminal pull-up maneuver specifically designed to defeat PAC-3 interception, launched from 4 mobile TEL batteries pre-positioned in the mountains of North Korea's South Hamgyong province. Their compressed simultaneous salvo designed to arrive over the carrier's last known position within a 38-second window. From China, 24 YJ-18 anti-ship cruise missiles from a Type 093A nuclear-powered attack submarine, positioned 112 miles northwest of USS Abraham Lincoln, and 16 YJ-12 supersonic anti-ship cruise missiles carried by 4 H-6J maritime strike bombers currently airborne over the Yellow Sea. Their weapons release window 32 minutes from now. Combined, 71 weapons, 3 threat types, 2 national origins, 1 synchronized impact window designed to exceed any defensive architecture that had ever been deployed to protect a single naval vessel. In Pyongyang and in Beijing, The planners of Operation Iron Convergence had calculated that the combination of a North Korean ballistic missile salvo and a Chinese submarine and air-launched cruise missile attack, arriving simultaneously from different vectors, would create a saturation scenario that no Aegis architecture could handle. The KN-23's pull-up maneuver in the terminal phase was specifically designed to defeat the SM-6 engagement geometry. The YJ-18's high subsonic sea skimming approach was designed to present the lowest possible radar cross-section. The YJ-12's supersonic speed was designed to compress the engagement timeline. Together, the three threat types would arrive in a defensive picture that could not track, prioritize, and engage them all before the first impacts. They had made 6 catastrophic mistakes. First mistake: Operation Iron Convergence had been penetrated at the coordination level 5 months before execution. The NSA's collection operation against the joint PLA Navy and KPA coordination channel had been running at surge capacity since the channel was first identified. The traffic analysis had progressively built a picture of the operational concept. Not the specific timing, not the exact weapon counts, but the structural outline. A simultaneous ballistic and cruise missile attack on a U.S. carrier, coordinated between Chinese submarine and air assets, and North Korean land-based missile batteries. The assessment, completed with high confidence 7 weeks before the attack, had been transmitted to USS Abraham Lincoln's strike group commander at his pre-deployment briefing. He had organized his defensive posture, his pre-positioning of assets, and his force protection plan around the specific threat combination that the assessment described. Second mistake: the 4 KN-23 TEL batteries in South Hamgyong Province had been continuously tracked for 19 days. Space Force satellites tasked to the Korean Peninsula missile threat had imaged each battery at its pre-survey launch position twice in the preceding 72 hours, providing coordinates accurate to within 12 meters. When the batteries activated their pre-launch navigation alignment systems at 2:03 a.m., 15 minutes before the first missile fired, the electromagnetic signatures were detected by a classified seismic and signals intelligence sensor network and transmitted to USS Abraham Lincoln at 2:04 a.m. 14 minutes of final warning. The strike group's defensive engagement sequences were already pre-computed. They needed no additional calculation time. 14 minutes was enough to ensure that every interceptor was loaded, every radar was in the correct scan mode, and every operator was at their station with a pre-computed solution on their screen. Third mistake: the Type 093A submarine had been tracked for 26 days. A P-8A Poseidon from VP-47, operating out of Kadena Air Base, had acquired the Type 093A's acoustic signature on a standard anti-submarine warfare patrol 26 days before the attack. The signature had been matched to the Type 093A's known acoustic profile in the SOSUS database and had been passed to USS Chung-hoon, an Arleigh Burke-class destroyer assigned to the strike group specifically for anti-submarine warfare screening. USS Chung-hoon had been maintaining passive sonar contact on the Type 093A for 19 consecutive days, tracking it as it moved into its attack position northwest of the carrier. When the Type 093A's torpedo tube outer doors opened at 2:11 a.m., a noise transient clearly detectable by USS Chung-hoon's towed array. The MH-60R Seahawk that had been on deck alert specifically for this contingency launched within 90 seconds. It was airborne and armed with 2 Mark 54 lightweight torpedoes and 2 AGM-114 Hellfire missiles at 2:13 a.m., 5 minutes before the YJ-18S fired. Fourth mistake: the 4 H-6J maritime strike bombers had been tracked from the moment they departed Laiyang Air Base, and their YJ-12 launch geometry had been pre-computed. An E-2D Advanced Hawkeye from VAW-117, airborne from USS Abraham Lincoln since 11 p.m., on a continuous surveillance mission, had been tracking the H-6J formation on its AN/APY-9 radar since the aircraft cleared the Chinese coast at 1:14 a.m. The E-2D's track had been feeding continuously into the strike group's joint fire control picture through Link 16. When the H-6Js reached their computed YJ-12 release point at 2:22 a.m., the four FA-18F Super Hornets from VFA 102 that had been vectored by the E-2D to an intercept position since 1:47 a.m. were already positioned between the bombers and USS Abraham Lincoln at their maximum AIM-120D engagement range. The H-6Js never knew the F/A-18Fs were there. Fifth mistake. The KN-23's terminal pull-up maneuver, the feature specifically designed to defeat PAC-3 interception, had been addressed by a software update to the SM-6 engagement algorithm that North Korean engineers had no knowledge of. Following the KN-23's operational debut in 2019, the Missile Defense Agency had conducted an extensive analysis of its terminal maneuver profile and had developed an updated SM-6 guidance algorithm that accounted for the specific altitude and velocity at which the KN-23 executed its pull-up. The update had been distributed to all Aegis ships operating in the Sea of Japan 3 weeks before the attack, specifically in response to the intelligence assessment that identified the KN-23 as the primary North Korean contribution to Operation Iron Convergence. The SM-6 interceptors aboard USS Abraham Lincoln's Aegis consort vessels were running the updated algorithm. The KN-23's terminal maneuver was no longer the defeat mechanism its designers had intended. It was a predictable behavioral signature that the updated SM-6 guidance used to predict the missile's final approach vector. Sixth mistake. The simultaneous arrival window that was supposed to saturate the defensive architecture depended on the KN-23 salvo and the Chinese cruise missile attack, arriving within 38 seconds of each other. The KN-23's flight time from South Hamgyong Province to USS Abraham Lincoln's position, 208 miles, was approximately 9 minutes at its standard trajectory. The YJ-18's flight time from the Type 093A's launch position was approximately 11 minutes at cruise speed. The H-6J's YJ-12 release point was 33 minutes from USS Abraham Lincoln. For all three attack elements to arrive simultaneously, the timing had to be precise to within seconds. The KN-23 batteries fired on their planned schedule. The Type 093A's YJ-18S were scheduled to fire at 2:18 a.m., the same moment the KN-23S arrived. But the Type 093A never fired its YJ-18S. The MH-60R Seahawk's Mark 54 torpedo entered the water at 2:16 a.m., 2 minutes before the YJ-18 launch window opened. The torpedo's active sonar homed on the Type 093A at 2:17 a.m., and the warhead detonated against the submarine's hull at 2:17 a.m. and 41 seconds. The YJ-18 attack element of Operation Iron Convergence was removed from the engagement before a single missile launched. The synchronized arrival window collapsed. The 31 KN-23 ballistic missiles arrived unsupported. The 4 H-6Js arrived into a defensive picture that was not saturated and not degraded. What happened in the next 27 minutes dismantled Operation Iron Convergence, removed the Type 093A from the battle space permanently, and generated a response that struck North Korean and Chinese strike infrastructure across two nations before dawn. At 2:18 a.m., 31 KN-23 ballistic missiles left their launchers across 4 batteries in South Hamgyong Province within a 44-second window. The pre-launch warning had given USS Abraham Lincoln's strike group 14 minutes to prepare. The engagement was already executing. USS Shiloh and USS Barry, the 2 baseline 9 Aegis cruiser and destroyer assigned to the strike group specifically for their certified ballistic missile defense capability, had their SM-6 missiles pre-assigned to specific KN-23 tracks from the pre-computed solutions. SM-6 interceptors launched from both vessels in a rapid two-ship sequence beginning at 2:19 a.m. The updated KN-23 terminal maneuver algorithm guided the SM-6 kill vehicles through the pull-up phase with the precision that the original algorithm could not have achieved. 24 KN-23 missiles were neutralized in the mid-course and early terminal phases. 7 survived the first intercept attempt and continued toward the terminal phase. USS Fitzgerald and USS Howard, the 2 additional destroyers screening the carrier, engaged the 7 survivors in the terminal layer with SM-2. Extended Range Block 3B. 5 were neutralized in the terminal layer at altitude above the Sea of Japan. 2 survived into the close-in engagement zone. USS Abraham Lincoln's own ESSM and RAM short-range systems engaged both. Both were neutralized at under 4 kilometers. Their debris fell into the Sea of Japan 6 miles from the carrier's position. 31 KN-23 ballistic missiles. 31 neutralized. 0 impacts on USS Abraham Lincoln or any vessel in the strike group. The 4 H-6J maritime strike bombers reached their YJ-12 release point at 2:22 a.m., 4 minutes after the KN-23 salvo began, and 2 minutes after the Type 093A had been removed from the battle space. The FA-18Fs from VFA 102 were waiting. 4F/A-18Fs, 16A IM-1, 20D AMRA-AMS. The H-6Js, flying straight and level at their weapons release altitude, were acquired on the FA-18F's AN/APG-79 radar at maximum BVR engagement range. All 4 H-6J bombers were engaged simultaneously. 3 were neutralized in the first AIM-1, 20D salvo before any YJ-12 was released. The 4th H-6J released 4 YJ-12 supersonic missiles before being neutralized by a follow-on AIM-120D. The 4 YJ-12S, the only Chinese cruise missiles that entered the engagement, were engaged by USS Shiloh's SM-2 at extended range as they descended to their sea-skimming profile. All 4 were neutralized at 31 miles from the carrier. 0 YJ-18S launched, 4 YJ-12S launched, 4 neutralized, 31 KN-23s neutralized, 71 planned weapons, 4 reached the engagement, 0 reached USS Abraham Lincoln. Now the strike group answered. At 2:22 a.m., 4 minutes after the first KN-23 launched, USS Shiloh fired her first Tomahawk salvo, 28 missiles. Their targets were the 4 KN-23 TEL battery firing positions in South Hamgyong Province, whose coordinates had been held in the fire control system for 19 days. The TEL vehicles were now in post-launch dispersal movement, tracked by Space Force satellites whose feeds were piped directly into the strike group's targeting network. Tomahawks were programmed with initial aim points at the firing positions and updated in flight via satellite data link to track the dispersing vehicles. The 4 firing positions were struck between 2:41 a.m. and 2:47 a.m. 3 of the 4 dispersing TEL vehicles were struck on their movement routes by updated Tomahawks. 1 TEL vehicle reached its first cover position. It was struck by a second Tomahawk salvo of 4 missiles, fired by USS Barry at 2:29 a.m. using the satellite track data that had followed the vehicle to its cover site. All 4 KN-23 battery positions were rendered inoperable. All 4 TEL vehicles were rendered inoperable. USS Chung Hoon and USS Howard fired a combined Tomahawk salvo of 32 missiles beginning at 2:25 a.m., targeting the North Korean People's Army Strategic Force Coordination and Command Complex at Wonsan, the facility from which the KN-23 launch order had been transmitted. and from which any follow-on North Korean conventional strike operations in the Sea of Japan sector would be directed. The Wonsan complex received 20 missiles in a time-on-target sequence between 2:43 a.m. and 2:49 a.m. The command building, the launch coordination center, the communications infrastructure, and the backup command node were all struck. The Strategic Forces Eastern Coastal Command capability was rendered inoperable before 3 a.m. The remaining 12 Tomahawks struck the North Korean coastal radar network north of Wonsan. 4 installations that had provided maritime domain awareness tracking of USS Abraham Lincoln for the preceding 72 hours, and whose continued operation would enable any follow-on targeting of the strike group. At 2:31 a.m., USS Abraham Lincoln launched her full strike package. 18 aircraft airborne in 14 minutes. 8 F-35C Lightning IIs carrying JASSM-ER cruise missiles assigned to Chinese strike infrastructure. 6 FA-18E Super Hornets carrying JDAM-equipped ordnance assigned to North Korean targets. 4 EA-18G Growlers activating broadband jamming over both the North Korean Eastern Coast radar network and the Chinese Yellow Sea surveillance network at 2:44 a.m. The F-35 CJASSM-ER package targeted Liang Air Base, the H-6J launch facility, whose remaining aircraft and YJ-12 inventory would have sustained any follow-on PLA maritime strike. 16 JASSM-ER missiles reached Liang between 3:19 a.m. and 3:24 a.m., striking the maintenance complex, YJ-12 weapons storage, fuel infrastructure, and regiment operations building. Secondary detonations from stored YJ-12 missiles produced a burn visible on Space Force satellite imagery for over 3 hours. The FA-18E Super Hornets struck the KPA missile fuel production facility at Hamhung. The installation, whose liquid propellant output sustained the KN-23 battery's operational tempo, and whose destruction would degrade the KPA's ability to reconstitute its South Hamgyong Province missile force. 24 GBU-31 JDAMS impacted the facility's 5 main structures between 3:14 a.m. and 3:19 a.m. The propellant production building, the storage tanks, the transfer infrastructure, and the technical support facility were all rendered inoperable. The propellant storage detonations burned for over 4 hours. B-2A Spirit stealth bombers from Whiteman Air Force Base. 2 aircraft that had been airborne on a classified alert orbit over the Western Pacific since the pre-attack intelligence indicators elevated the strike group's threat assessment 48 hours earlier, received their strike tasking at 2:26 a.m. Their targets were the hardened tunnel complex in North Korea's South Hamgyong Province that housed the reserve KN-23 airframe inventory, the missiles that would have been used to reconstitute the 4 batteries after their initial salvo. Each B-2A carried 8 GBU-57 massive ordnance penetrator bombs, 4 sequential GBU-57 impacts on the tunnel's primary entrance shaft and 2 impacts on its ventilation infrastructure between 3:31 a.m. and 3:38 a.m., produced structural collapse at the entrance and assessed interior damage sufficient to render the stored missile inventory inaccessible. The full accounting, compiled by USS Abraham Lincoln's Strike Group Commander and transmitted to 7th Fleet and U.S. Pacific Fleet by 5 a.m. 71 weapons planned against USS Abraham Lincoln Strike Group. Type 093A submarine neutralized before YJ-18 launch. 24 planned YJ-18S, 0 launched. 4 H-6J bombers engaged before weapons release. 12 of 16 planned YJ-12S, 0 launched. 4 YJ-12S launched by 4th H-6J before it was neutralized. All 4 intercepted by SM-2, 0 impacts. 31 KN-23 ballistic missiles. All 31 neutralized, 0 impacts. USS Abraham Lincoln, undamaged. Flight operations continuous throughout engagement. All escort vessels undamaged. U.S. personnel who sustained fatal outcomes 0. U.S. aircraft rendered inoperable 0. In retaliation, Type 093A submarine rendered permanently inoperable in the Sea of Japan. 4 H-6J maritime strike bombers removed from the battle space over the Yellow Sea. 4 KN-23 TEL batteries rendered inoperable in South Hamgyong Province. KPA Strategic Force Eastern Command Complex at Wonsan rendered inoperable. 4 North Korean coastal radar installations rendered inoperable. Laeong Air Base H-6J Maritime Strike Complex rendered inoperable with secondary detonations. KPA Missile Fuel Production Facility at Hamhung rendered inoperable with propellant storage detonations. KN-23 Reserve Tunnel Complex in South Hamgyong Province rendered inoperable by GBU-57 MOP strikes. Chinese, PLA Navy, and North Korean KPA personnel who sustained fatal outcomes across all platforms and strike packages. 263. At 4:47 a.m., USS Abraham Lincoln completed her post-engagement recovery and resumed scheduled operations. The overcast was still at 6,000 feet. The swell still 3 meters from the northwest. The deck cycling aircraft as it had done every night for 14 days. In Pyongyang and in Beijing, the architects of Operation Iron Convergence reached the same conclusion simultaneously. The operation that was supposed to demonstrate two nations' saturation capability had instead demonstrated that the carrier had been tracking their submarine for 26 days, reading their coordination channel for 5 months, and running interceptor software designed for their specific missile maneuver. USS Abraham Lincoln was still there. The Sea of Japan was still free. The Type 093A was on the bottom. The infrastructure was inoperable. This is what happens when two nations plan a coordinated strike against a United States carrier group in the Sea of Japan. You do not achieve surprise. You find that your coordination channel has been read for 5 months, that your submarine has been tracked for 26 days, that your missile's terminal maneuver has been modeled and defeated by a software update your engineers never knew existed. You find that an MH-60R Seahawk sank your submarine 2 minutes before it could fire, collapsing your entire synchronized arrival window into a single-axis attack that the carrier's consorts handled without saturation. You plan 14 months. You coordinate across 2 nations. You commit 71 weapons. 4 reach the engagement. 0 reach the carrier. And before the sun rises, the infrastructure behind every one of those weapons is inoperable wreckage spread between Shandong Province and the North Korean coast. USS Abraham Lincoln was on station. The Sea of Japan was open, and the carrier was already launching her first morning sorties before the damage assessment from Laeong Air Base had finished burning.